And the nice thing about this arrangement is that I can immediately cut a second strip of the same thickness without making any adjustments. Also, there's no limit on the upper length of the piece of wood. This is the surface that was cut by the blade. It's very smooth. The riving knife is a wedge. It starts at a thickness slightly less than the kerf of the blade and then grows to a thickness of 3/8 of an inch. And all that growth is on this side. This side stays parallel with the blade. I stopped part way through this cut because I want to show something. The wedged riving knife is pushing this outward, and that's operating almost as a feather board pushing this wood in. So if I pull that away, it snaps back. There's a straight line surface all the way down here. This is parallel to this, that's keeping this piece of wood in place. So as I get near the end of the cut, it's held in place right up until it runs out of fence. The piece is coming out flat. It's the same thickness on both edges. I marked that right on the fence plate. And that's not the thickness of the plate, it's the thickness of the strip that will be cut when that plate is installed. The thickness of the fence plate determines how thick the strip will be that gets cut. So I made plates of a few different thicknesses, and I can also shim to get fine adjustments in between. The face plate slides, and you want to bring it up close to the front leading edge of the blade, and of course that'll be different depending on the height of the blade. Now if there's a competition for which fixture can cut the thinnest strips, I think this might be it. 1/100th of an inch thick. I found it helpful to cut the end of the push stick on an angle so that it holds the piece of wood down at the end of the cut. Variation in thickness when I measure it at different points along is less than 5/1000ths of an inch. It also does a good job of shaving a little bit off of a thin strip to make it slightly thinner. You can attach a blade guard to the fence, and that could be clear plastic. The bottom has one tight-fitting runner and a cleat at each end so that it sets into the table saw and does not move. Here's how I aligned the fence with the blade so that it gets glued in place parallel to the blade. This kerf slot was cut before the cleat up here was put on by sliding the board forward into the spinning blade, and then the riving knife glues into that slot of the kerf. If I was doing this again, instead of gluing this cleat on, I would screw it on, and then I could remove it so that if I ever have to replace the riving knife, I could just slide the sled forward into the blade and let it cut through the riving knife and make a new kerf. Another thing I would do different is instead of having the grain running this way, I'd have it running vertical or maybe on an angle, because when it runs this way, it's not very strong. It could break off because it's only an 1/8 inch thin at the bottom, and also it's more inclined to warp. So grain on some kind of an angle would be better. When you're done, don't forget to put the riving knife back in for safety.